They say the earth remembers everything, every crime, every curse, every secret buried too deep to dig back up. But in the quiet hills of Pennsylvania, there's a place the land itself seems to reject, a pit of stone and silence that locals refuse to speak of. Hidden behind the tree line, covered in ivy and fear, it sits inverted, a pyramid turned upside down, its point sinking into the soil like a dagger. The upside down pyramid, they call it. And for more than a century, it's been waiting for someone to remember why it was built. No official record marks its construction. No town archive admits it exists. But the few who've gone there, the wanderers, the drifters, the foolhardy teenagers, they all return with the same haunted look. Some whisper about voices beneath the ground, others about hands that brush against them when no one's there. But one man, a historian named Elias Granger, left something more tangible, a journal filled with sketches, dates, and words that shouldn't have survived this long. He found the structure in 1845 when Pennsylvania's mines were young and hungry. Towns like Lock Haven and Renovo were expanding, swallowing the forests whole. Granger believed he'd stumbled upon an ancient burial monument, perhaps of the Lenape or Iroquois. But the deeper he dug, the more the truth seemed to shift. The stones weren't carved with native markings. They were cut with precision, industrial precision, and the foundation led downward, not up. A pyramid that defied reason, designed to bury something the builders didn't want the world to see again. For years, the upside-down pyramid was a whisper, a curse told over firelight, a warning to miners not to dig too deep. But the story didn't end there. In the decades that followed, whole families vanished near that valley. Farms left half-plowed, dinner tables still set, doors hanging open. And every time someone went looking for them, the trail ended in the same place, that sunken monument of stone and shadow, rising downward into the heart of the earth. It's easy to dismiss stories like this, old folklore, rural superstition. But if you look closely, you'll find a pattern in the county records, property lines shifting, deeds erased, and one chilling annotation written in the margins of an 1851 land survey. No burial permitted here again. And maybe, just maybe, that note wasn't meant for the dead. Elias Granger wasn't just another historian. He was obsessed, a man who believed America's soil held more truth than its books ever would. When he first stumbled across the pyramid site, it wasn't by chance. He'd been following a trail of letters, half-burned documents exchanged between two early settlers, the Holloway brothers, who mentioned a downward tomb for upward sins. Most historians dismissed the letters as drunken rambling, but Granger saw something else, coordinates faintly hidden in the margins, and when he followed them, he found the pit. He described the moment in his journal with unsettling clarity. The air, he wrote, was so still it rang in the ears. The structure itself was massive, nearly 60 feet wide, its stones arranged in precise geometric alignment. Yet it wasn't built above ground, it sank into it, like a wound closing around itself. No one could explain how it hadn't collapsed. The limestone walls were cold to the touch, dry even in the rain. He noted something else, too, symbols etched into the interior. Not letters, not runes, spirals and intersecting lines that seemed to repeat a pattern, one that mirrored itself when viewed upside down. Granger spent 3 nights at the site before he stopped writing. On the 4th page, the ink trails off mid-sentence. The words, "It breathes beneath me," are the last legible entry. He vanished soon after. Search parties found only fragments of his camp, his journal, a lantern still half full of oil, and a set of footprints leading to the pyramid's mouth, none returning. But decades later, in 1872, a railway survey team found something strange. While expanding a freight line not far from that same valley, they uncovered a chamber, not a mine shaft, not a cave, but a crafted room. The walls were made of the same stone described in Granger's writings. Inside lay 6 human remains arranged in a perfect circle, all facing inward. Each skeleton skull had been intentionally cracked open at the crown, and something, perhaps metal, perhaps stone, had been placed inside. It was removed before the team could analyze it. The official record labeled it ritual burial, possible native origin. But anyone who'd seen the original site drawings knew better. The carvings were too precise, the geometry too deliberate. This was something built to contain, not to commemorate. And when the foreman of that railway crew returned months later to finish the line, he found the chamber sealed again. The stones replaced, the soil untouched, as if it had never been disturbed. Only one message remained, scratched into the rail map's corner by a shaking hand. It's closing itself. By the turn of the century, the upside-down pyramid had already faded into rumor. The valley was fenced off, bought under a mining company's name that didn't exist. The locals called it the Hollows, and most refused to step foot there after sundown. But history has a way of clawing its way back through generations, and in the nearby town of Dunmore, whispers of the pyramid began surfacing again in 1904 after the collapse of the Miners' Union Hall. It was a tragedy. 42 men trapped underground. Only 7 were recovered. But when the rescue teams dug through the last section of earth, they found something strange. The tunnel hadn't collapsed naturally. It looked as though the ground had folded inward, like a mouth closing shut. The walls bore the same smooth limestone pattern from the old journal sketches. And in the chamber beyond the rubble, they found a single stone slab carved with an inverted triangle. The mark of the pyramid. No one wanted to speak of it. The newspapers printed a tame version, cave in at Dunmore mine, cause unknown. But families of the lost workers began receiving strange notes in the weeks that followed. Unsigned letters sealed with wax in the shape of a spiral. The contents were simple. Do not dig where the land breathes. Within a year, Dunmore began to change. Livestock went missing. The wells dried up. A thick iron taste lingered in the water. And one by one, families began leaving. By 1910, only a handful of homes remained occupied. When the census takers arrived, they found whole streets abandoned, furniture still in place, clocks still ticking. The town was dying quietly, as if the earth had started to reclaim it. But not everyone forgot. In 1922, a preacher named Samuel Corbin began to gather those who stayed, mostly the older families, the ones who remembered Elias Granger's story. He believed the pyramid was a spiritual gate, a wound between worlds that could be healed through sacrifice. The local authorities dismissed him as delusional, but when Corbin and 12 of his followers vanished one autumn night, the sheriff found their trail heading toward the old valley. At the site, they discovered remnants of a fire and 13 sets of footprints descending into the darkness. No footprints came back. Only Corbin's Bible remained, open to a verse from Jobby, "The earth hath bars, and the dead come not forth." After that, Dunmore erased itself from maps. Mail routes were cut. The company ownership dissolved, but the land didn't stay silent. Hikers in the 1930s began reporting low sounds from beneath the hills. Not wind, not machinery, but something rhythmic, slow, almost like breath. The kind of sound that makes the ground feel alive beneath your feet. By 1949, America was rebuilding itself after the war. New highways, new industries, a new optimism that left no room for ghosts. But not everyone believed the past should stay buried. A small team of geology students from the University of Pittsburgh had come across an old map during a county records cleanup. A faded, water-stained document with a peculiar mark labeled only "Subterranean Formation, Do Not Disturb." The coordinates matched the valley once known as the Hollows, the upside-down pyramid. The students, led by a graduate named Ruth Lasker, saw it as a curiosity, a forgotten structure that could make their careers. She was brilliant, ambitious, and unafraid of legends. The others followed her, 5 in total. They set up camp in early autumn, when the air was crisp and the trees had begun to thin. Locals warned them not to go near the old site. Some offered crosses, some refused to speak at all. But Ruth laughed it off, saying, "If hell had an entrance, it would be in Washington, not Pennsylvania." On the second night, their equipment began to fail. Compass needles spun, and the air turned heavy, metallic, charged, almost as electric. One of the students recorded strange low frequencies on a reel-to-reel tape. When they played it back, the sound warped, like something moving between the layers of the earth. On the third day, they found it, the top rim of the pyramid, just visible through the moss. They cleared the brush and unearthed the first stone slab, identical to Granger's description, cold, dry, carved with intersecting spirals. Ruth insisted on descending into the structure. The others hesitated, but by dusk they followed her down a narrow stairway that spiraled against the inner wall. The journal from that expedition still exists, found decades later, half-burned inside an old ranger station. It describes the descent in chilling detail. Each step down made the air denser, harder to breathe. The walls began to pulse faintly with condensation, and the deeper they went, the louder the low frequency became. Not mechanical, but organic. as if the structure itself had a heartbeat. They reached a chamber lined with human-sized indentations, too uniform to be natural, too empty to be graves. In the center stood a single column of black stone, slick and glistening, though no water flowed inside. When Ruth touched it, the others swore they saw the surface ripple. She said she heard a whisper, not in her ears, but behind her eyes. A voice that said, "It remembers." The last entry in the journal is dated October 12th. The handwriting is jagged, uneven. It reads, "The stairs are gone. It's closing above us." The rescue team found only their tent and the first 3 steps of the stairway exposed before the earth sealed itself once again. The report was buried by the university and marked as unsubstantiated. But that same year, locals reported tremors in the valley and a low, rhythmic pulse that echoed through the hills for 7 consecutive nights. By the early 1960s, the legend of the upside-down pyramid had nearly disappeared from public memory. Only a few scattered references remained. A forgotten article in the Loch Haven Gazette, a brief mention in an oral history archive. But something was stirring again beneath the soil of Pennsylvania. In the decade that followed, the pyramid didn't just return to rumor, it began to claim bloodlines. It started with the Millers, a family of 5 living on an isolated property 3 miles from where the pyramid was said to lie. They were ordinary people, quiet, religious, hard-working. In November of 1963, a neighbor found their farmhouse door wide open, lights still on, dinner untouched. No sign of struggle, no footprints leading away. Just the faint smell of iron in the air and a strange, chalky residue on the floor, a pale spiral drawn in what appeared to be ash. Within 6 months, 2 more families vanished under identical circumstances. The sheriff called it probable abduction. The newspapers called it mass hysteria. But there was no ransom, no suspect, no trace. The houses remained empty, slowly reclaimed by the woods. Only one man claimed to have seen something, a hunter named William Greer. He told police he'd followed the faint glow of a lantern through the trees one night, thinking it was poachers. What he found instead was a circle of figures standing silently in a clearing, and at the center, a pit breathing steam, ringed with black stone. He swore one of the figures turned toward him, and that it had no face. Greer's testimony was never recorded. He was found drowned in his own well 2 days later. By 1972, federal officials quietly purchased a 50-acre radius around the site, labeling it a geological hazard zone. Locals were relocated, compensated, and told never to return. But even government secrecy couldn't hide what came next. Construction workers building the containment fences began reporting dizziness, auditory hallucinations, and feelings of being watched from below. 3 quit on the spot. 1 was hospitalized after suffering a seizure near the tree line. His last words before being sedated were, "It's awake again." To this day, no one knows what it referred to. But the following week, ground-penetrating scans taken during the project revealed something extraordinary, or horrifying, depending on who you ask. Beneath the soil, nearly 200 feet deep, lay an enormous cavity in the shape of an inverted pyramid pulsing faintly with heat. The data was sealed immediately. The area was declared off limits to civilians, but stories continued to leak. Night guards reporting whispers underground, vibrations that made their teeth ache, and strange rhythmic sounds recorded on security microphones between midnight and 3 a.m. If you're still watching, you're already braver than most. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if this was your bloodline? Would you have left that land? Or would you have gone down there, just once, to see what called your family's name from beneath the dirt? For nearly 15 years, the valley remained sealed under federal control. Maps were redrawn, access roads were erased, and those who lived nearby learned to pretend the land simply wasn't there. The upside-down pyramid became a myth again, an invisible scar hidden beneath the forest floor. But the quiet didn't last. In the summer of 1987, a classified incident broke that silence. It began as a minor seismic anomaly recorded by a geological station in Clinton County. The tremor was shallow, localized to less than 1 square mile, and it came with no aftershock. Yet nearby residents reported a deep sound, like something massive shifting underground, followed by a faint light seeping from the soil. The official explanation, gas venting through porous limestone. But one man didn't believe it. His name was Daniel Weaver, a former Army engineer who'd been part of the containment project back in the 70s. He began writing letters to local newspapers, claiming the government had built a concrete tomb over an ancient structure that would not stay buried. He was dismissed as a conspiracy theorist until that fall, his house burned to the ground under mysterious circumstances. The fire report stated origin indeterminate. Among the debris, only one thing survived: a half-melted tape recorder. The audio, restored years later by a local archivist, captured the last 2 minutes of Weaver's life. The sound begins with static, then a low hum, identical to the frequencies recorded during the 1949 excavation. Then a voice, distorted, almost inhuman, whispers a single phrase: "You built the walls inside out." No one knows what that means. But weeks later, the containment structure collapsed inward, swallowing nearly 3 acres of forest. The air turned acidic for days, killing everything within the perimeter, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. No smoke, no debris. The ground sealed over itself again, smooth and cold as stone. Officially, the event was never acknowledged. The government declared the site a chemical waste reserve and paved over the access road with asphalt, letting the forest reclaim the rest. But those who remember the night say the valley glowed faintly for hours, a dull red light that pulsed in time with the wind. Every few decades, something breathes there. It exhales a kind of memory, a heat that hums through the trees, a sound you can't quite hear but feel deep inside your chest. People who've camped near the border say it messes with time. Watches stop. Voices echo twice. And some swear they've seen shapes in the mist, outlines of men and women walking backward into the earth. Whatever the government buried down there, it wasn't just a structure. It was something alive, something that remembers. Today, few people in Pennsylvania even know the upside down pyramid ever existed. The valley is dense with oak and ash now, reclaimed by the wild. No signs, no markers, no fences remain. But if you stand on the old timber road after midnight, you can still hear the ground sigh. Locals say it sounds like the wind, but it isn't. It's deeper, steadier, the same rhythm that's been pulsing beneath this land for almost 2 centuries. In 2019, a small group of urban explorers stumbled onto what they thought was an abandoned Cold War bunker somewhere between Lock Haven and Renovo. They uploaded a short video before it was taken down less than 24 hours later. The footage showed a concrete hatch covered in vines and rust. One man pried it open and dropped a camera inside. For a moment, all you could see was the beam of a flashlight cutting through the dust, and then, faintly, the glint of spirals, inverted geometry, the same markings drawn in Elias Granger's journal in 1845. At the Ozily 47 mark, the camera microphone picked up a sound, not wind, not movement, but something like a low, resonant heartbeat. Then the video ended. No one from that group has posted online since. The file was analyzed by a private historian from Scranton who'd spent his life studying forbidden architecture. Structures built to conceal, not to honor. He claimed the pyramid's dimensions matched a lost design from early Masonic blueprints, ones referencing the vessel that seals the gate below. In his final interview before disappearing in 2021, he said something that still chills researchers today. It isn't a tomb, it's a throat. If that's true, then everything we've been told, from the missing miners to the vanished families, begins to make a dark kind of sense. The upside-down pyramid wasn't meant to hold the dead. It was meant to feed on them. A structure designed in reverse to channel everything buried beneath into something that still hungers. And maybe that's why the land keeps sealing itself. Maybe the earth isn't protecting us from what's below. Maybe it's protecting it. So if you ever find yourself in northern Pennsylvania, and the ground beneath your feet hums softly, if your compass starts to spin, if your breath fogs in warm air, stop moving. Don't dig, don't listen. Because some parts of America's history were never meant to be unearthed.